Welcome inside another edition of Patriots Roundtable here on CLNS Media. CLNS Media, the leading online provider of audio-video coverage of your New England Patriots. Welcome inside, everybody. Evan Valenti with you here today, filling in for Mike. If I'm a new face, new voice for you guys, hello, nice to meet you. Pleasure is all mine. Trust me, it's all mine. If you've never heard of me before, never heard my voice before, I host our Celtics Roundtable on CLNS Media. Fun show there with me and a couple of guys. Changes quite frequently, bringing guests in. But I'm here to host Patriots Roundtable with our special guest here today, Ian Eagle. He's calling the game for CBS between the Texans and the Patriots coming up Sunday from Foxborough, 1 o'clock on CBS. And before we get to Ian, I want to tell you guys, for those of you that love fantasy football, well, you need to try my new favorite app right now. It's called Draft. It's weekly fantasy football, but it's not like the other guys, folks. On Draft, you play real live snake drafts with other people just like in your season-long league. And here's how it works. It's a draft that lasts for just 1 week only. There's no management required. Just set it and forget it. Once you're done drafting, that is it. No trades, no waiver wire, lurking around, vulturing, trying to see if like Tariq Cohen or somebody else is going to waiver wire to grab. Draft even takes care of the last-minute injuries for you. Draft starts every couple of minutes. You can join one. Just, you know what? Right now it sounds pretty good. And the best part is you play for cold, hard cash. Drafts start from just $1. So there's a draft for literally everyone. No salary caps. Play in a real live snake draft just like you play with your friends in a season-long league, but do it every single week. Come and join me on Draft today. Download the app anytime. Just search Draft in your app store and join a game in just minutes. Or play right from your computer on playdraft.com, whatever you want. For a limited time only, all new players get a free entry into a draft where you make your first deposit. But you got to use my promo code PATSBEAT. That's right. Play a real money game for free and win real money just by using the promo code PATSBEAT on your first deposit on Draft. Just search Draft in your app store or go to playdraft.com and come play for free with promo code PATSBEAT. And now, the Birdman, Ian Eagle. I do want to start with something that's not actually even Patriots or Texans related, because and I only want to talk about this one individual. I don't want to bring anything else into it because there's a lot of, drama and stuff that I don't want to get into. But Tony Romo has been pretty excellent. I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to him at all, but it seems like the entire sports broadcasting world in terms of football has been kind of blown away with Romo's, I guess, natural ability to kind of control and command the game. Have you listened to him at all so far?
I have, yeah. In fact, the two games that I've done have followed the games that he and Jim Nantz have worked. So it's been a big part of my prep, and I find it really refreshing because guys that normally get into this business, not just analysts, but play-by-play guys and hosts, oftentimes you're just doing what you think you're supposed to do, which is usually trying to mirror what you see, meaning Tony Romo's watched football his whole life. He's watched broadcasts his whole life. So the natural thing would be, I'll just go on the air and do what the other guys do. And what Tony has done is he's been himself. You can't teach likability. He's really likable. That comes across when he's on television. The second part is he's really knowledgeable, and he's sharing that knowledge. I don't think Tony went into this season with the idea, okay, I'm going to predict plays before they happen. That's what's coming out of him in the moment because that's what strikes him. And ultimately, that's what you look for in a good analyst, that they say what's on their mind at the right time, at the right moment, using the correct words and skills to be articulate. So it's been a fantastic couple of weeks for Tony, and he's just going with his gut instinct, and his gut instinct has been correct.
Now, him and Jim had New Orleans and New England last week. Did you ask Tony for any notes, a little bit of advanced prep here?
No. I think everybody is letting Tony learn on the job and do what he's got to do in preparation and trying to figure out the routine and the regimen of doing this gig. Everybody does it differently. It's one of those really intriguing aspects to the business. If you're a broadcast nerd and you're into this stuff, looking at broadcasters' prep sheets and getting a little insight into how they prepare. I think everybody at CBS has left Tony alone for the most part and allowed him to figure out the steps that he needs to be ready for these games. And he's got a Thursday, Sunday deal coming up starting next week where you got to prepare for 2 games a week, which I've been doing for many years, having done Thursday Night Football on the radio. And that clouds your brain even more. So you're not talking about 106 players that you're learning. You're talking about 212 players over the course of a week that you're trying to squeeze into your brain and then have that ability to grab that little nugget, that little piece of information when you need it in a millisecond. That's part of the job.
You know, Tony, I'll be honest, I'm going to stand up for you here, Ian. Not only do you do like 2 games a week, you have like Nets games that you have to do too. So you have all these different storylines going on. I honestly, you mentioned in the Zach Lowe piece, the Zach Lowe post podcast about like, I don't know how the hell you keep all your stuff straight because it just seems physically impossible to have, all this knowledge of not only the Nets guys, the guys they're playing that night, and then you talk about 2 weeks ahead of time. You're looking at, 2 weeks down the road who they're playing. Then you have NFL stuff. Like, I don't know how you stay sane, my friend.
I think my deepest fear when my head hits the pillow is that on a given Thursday or Sunday, I don't make this statement. Rodgers over the middle, looks to the end zone, throws, caught by Antetokounmpo. That's really where everything would fall apart somehow.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I understand how that could get a little complicated, but Ian, you do an absolutely masterful job at it. I have no clue how you do it. And I forgive me, how long have you been doing football for?
It's my 20th year.
Oh, my goodness.
I did the Jets prior to that. And I did NFL Europe back in 1997, which was a tremendous gig, by the way. They flew you to London. You set up shop there, and then from London you would go to your game. I had a game in Dusseldorf. I had a game in Amsterdam. I had a game in Frankfurt. I look back on that and think to myself how lucky I was to be exposed to that.
You're well-traveled at this point, but, you've been doing football ever since Tom Brady's been a quarterback, okay? Yep. My point is this. You've been a part of these production meetings, for CBS, and, you talk to Tom, you talk to Bill for years and years and years and years and years. At what point do you feel like you've known Brady to the point where, like, what do you ask him during these production meetings? You have so many meetings with him, you've met him so many times, you've asked him so many questions. What do you ask him at this point? It's not related to like his age or the new guys on the team or, his relationship with Bill. Like how do you bring newness to the broadcast?
Yeah, I think every conversation takes on a life of its own. Tom's so interesting, so you're not getting canned answers from him. You're getting thoughtful responses. When you ask a question, he doesn't get that glazed look in his eye. He actually wants to answer the question. So if you have good questions, oftentimes you'll get good answers. Now, I sit back and watch when Dan Fouts and Tom Brady interact because they're at a different level. It's quarterbacks talk. They can see one another in a different light that I'll never be able to achieve with Tom Brady because I just haven't been there. And I respect that. And that's part of the nuance and dynamic of a production meeting. Dan's been at this a long time. Dan knows how to get to the heart of a question, heart of a scouting report, and they can speak a different language. And it's just great being a fly on the wall. When it comes turn for me or our sideline reporter, Evan Washburn, I think we're looking for something from a little different angle, something that can help the broadcast or shed a little bit of light on who Tom is or what he's all about or what makes him tick. But I got to be honest, I don't go in there with 12 questions that I got to get in. I want to see where the conversation goes, and oftentimes he covers material before I even get a chance to ask a question. So it's really organic more than anything else when you're talking to guys like him or Peyton Manning or Drew Brees. These guys have done it all. They've seen it all. So you're just looking for something a little bit offbeat, a little bit different, and a little bit off the norm.
At what point are we going to be desensitized? At what point will we get to it where we'll, in terms of like what Tom Brady does, when will we stop being shocked about things that he does? I mean, you go back to his entire career has been kind of surprising, right? And now he comes off the greatest Super Bowl comeback in the history of the NFL. Now he's 40 years old. And the first game wasn't great, and a lot of people freaked out for no reason. And then he went into New Orleans last weekend and went 31 of 39, couple of touchdowns, 377 yards, was surgical with 3 wide receivers dressed, by the way, 2 of which were on the team last year, 1 of which was on the team before, or 2 of which were on the team at least during training camp. Philip Dorsett was a new one. He used all of his backs. I thought it was one of the better offensive game plans I've seen in a long time, considering who dressed for the Patriots last week. And yet Tom Brady made it work. I just have a hard time being impressed anymore, I guess is the word.
Yeah, and I think you just hit on it, because we're in a reactive world when it comes to sports, and sometimes overreact from one game or one quarter or one series. We get very strong opinions, and people now have a platform to share those opinions. So what used to be...
Is that why you don't have a Twitter? Is that why you don't have a Twitter? Because you just don't want to get involved in nonsense? I admire that.
So it used to be you in your living room or at your local watering hole screaming at the top of your lungs at the TV screen, and then maybe somebody you were hanging watching the game with, or a few people that were at the bar with you that might agree with you. And now you can make a statement, as we know, on social media, and you can get a lot of people to like it and agree with it and then empower it. And I think certainly with the Patriots, after all these years, after all the different players that have been rotated in and out, after all the different coaches that have come in and out, and the success is still there, we should not be surprised. We should not be shocked anymore. He does things that are shocking because of the circumstances. He's 40. How can we not put that in the equation? But the reality is, this is not your average run-of-the-mill football player. He's going to go down as maybe the most special player in NFL history, just based on what he's done, how he did it, and who he does it with. That's the amazing part to me. We talk about the preparation. I make these charts to help get me ready for the game, and I keep them over a 4-year period. At some point, I don't want to be a hoarder. I don't want to be featured on a reality show. I have to get rid of some as the years go by. So I try to keep it on a 4-year pattern of maintaining my charts. And I'll go back to a year. I'll go back 2 years. You go back 2 years with the New England Patriots, 3 years with the New England Patriots, and you look at their skill position players, the notes don't transfer. Those guys aren't here anymore. The fact that they can change personnel the way that they do shows a belief in the way they coach, a belief in the way they scout, and a belief in, of course, number 12, that Tom Brady will make people around him better. He does it every single season.
You talk about like the skill player, the churning skill players in and out. I think the biggest current example of that, I think, is James White. You look at what New England did with Shane Vereen in that Super Bowl against the Seattle Seahawks. They needed Shane Vereen that entire game, especially that fourth quarter. He was absolutely unbelievable. Then they let Shane go. They drafted James White, I think, a year prior to that, so he had been on the team for a year. They bring him in. He has that disastrous AFC Championship game against Denver where he drops 2 touchdowns that would have won them the game when you think about it, hindsight 2020. Then he comes back the next season, last year, and in the Super Bowl against the Falcons, you could have argued very successfully that he should have been the Super Bowl MVP over Brady. Now, Brady broke a ton of records, all this other stuff, but you look at what James White did. He was absolutely sensational after only a year ago being the biggest face of one of the reasons why they lost the game against Denver. And you're talking about potential for back-to-back-to-back Super Bowl championships. Now, that's pretty much impossible to do that. But that's what I think James White is a prime example of a guy that can get better in a system, a guy that the Patriots definitely trusted in college. They scouted him correctly. They trusted in him. Brady developed him a little bit. McDaniels developed him a little bit. I love James White's story just from watching him grow from year one to right now.
I think that's obviously one example, and there are so many on this roster. James White, they knew what they had, and they didn't unleash him. This was a gradual rise to the level that he is now, and that's based on what they thought he could handle in the moment. You're right about the AFC Championship game. But with that said, other teams at that point may have just moved on and said, all right, well, he can't handle the big stage or the big moment. They never looked at it that way. He was given more chances, and he came through. You're rewarded on this roster. But the great part about it, just because you've done something in years past doesn't mean that you're guaranteed anything the next year. You have to show it in every practice. You have to show it in the game on Sundays. And we see that now, even with the Patriots, that there's a healthy competition at spots, not based on reputation, but based on how you're performing. This is the way that Bill Belichick has always approached it, and when you win championships, it emboldens you to stick with that philosophy.
I enjoyed Belichick's little offensive line soliloquy this week, where he talked about the poor offensive line play around the NFL and how that's sort of a product of the way they practice. Now, I'm not here to argue with the one masterful Bill Belichick. That's not the reason why I got into this business. But I do want to, I think it's like a two-edged sword, right? I think some of that is true, but I also think if you look at the opposite side of the ball, like there's a lot of really good defensive players in the NFL that can make an impact from play to play. Like last night, Thursday night, I should say, we had a good example of that with some of the guys in the field for the Rams. Like Aaron Donald is a wrecking machine. Michael Brockers, even though he got hurt in that game, is an unbelievable football player. Other side of the ball, Navarro Bowman's really good. They have that kid Teron Armstead on San Francisco who's starting to figure out how he belongs on a football field. Do you think Belichick is 100% correct in this, or is it more 50-50 where I'm at?
Ev, I know this might come as a huge surprise. I'm going to lean towards Belichick on this one. I think offensive line play has eroded a bit, and I've seen it even through the first couple of weeks of this regular season. I've talked to some guys that played offensive line, Tony Baselli, Ross Tucker, guys that have lived it, that breathe it, and it's a clear-cut issue. I think technique has been affected. I do believe that the lack of practice time, the lack of practicing in pads has not allowed these guys to go and learn their job and perfect their job. And it's showing up on Sundays. That's not to say that you're not right as well. There are bigger, stronger, faster defensive players than ever before, guys that can do things coming off the edge that we've only seen here and there. Lawrence Taylor was a once-in-a-lifetime kind of player. We've got guys on defense now that, while I can't say they're Lawrence Taylor, they're in that conversation just based on their physical attributes and their desire and their studious nature. Khalil Mack, I had the Raiders last week. This guy is an all-around stud, combined with the fact that he wants to be great. That means watching film. That means sitting down with coaches, trying to figure out how to handle chip blocks week in, week out. There's just so much more available to these guys now to learn the specific parts of their game that they want to improve. And I do believe defensive line play, defensive ends, hybrids, linebackers, defensive ends are just at an all-time high.
Yeah, and some of the maybe the cream of the crop, like the number one guy, if he's completely healthy, J.J. Watt lines up for the Houston Texans. And I'm sure you've seen this stat before, but in 5 games against the Patriots, J.J. Watt somehow has 11 tackles and a half a sack. How is that even remotely possible?
Remotely possible based on preparation and the fact that the Patriots have one of the best offensive line coaches in NFL history. But I think a lot of it is based on circumstance as well. The Patriots are a better team. And I know J.J. Watt can be a game wrecker. We've seen it time and time again, 3-time defensive player of the year in the NFL. But there are schemes. If you are focused on stopping one guy, you might have a chance to stop him. at least based on the stats that you're laying out. But that doesn't mean you're always going to stop everyone else. I like his supporting cast this year. Clowney is now playing like the guy we thought he would be coming out of South Carolina. Whitney Merciless is underrated, maybe doesn't get enough credit. Bernardrick McKinney, real deal, makes plays every single week. They are beat up a bit in the secondary. We're going to see Tom Brady look to take advantage of that, but their front is for real, and this will be the best defensive team that the Pats have played in the 3 weeks of this regular season.
And I'd rather have it the way the Texans have it. The way the Patriots are just thin up front. Their front seven is not great. You know, I mean, they have a bunch of guys that can rotate in and out. Lawrence Guy was one of the newcomers. Dietrich Wise has been a guy that's turned heads a little bit. Trey Flowers has been excellent for New England the past 2 years. But I love the way the Texans have it up front with you talk about Merciless, who gets, I think, again, not enough credit, but gets a lot of credit from certain people. Like, I love Michael Lombardi. He's probably one of my favorite NFL analysts. Talks about him all the time. Jadeveon Clowney, J.J. Watt, they get pressure on the quarterback, so they rely less on their secondary. And you look at the Patriots, it's sort of the opposite. They have Stephon Gilmore, Malcolm Butler, who's taken a little bit of a backseat this year, Eric Rowe, Devin McCourty. They have a great secondary, but their stuff up front is questionable. And it's inexperienced. And you look at what they lost. They've lost Rob Ninkovich in the offseason. They lost Chris Long in the offseason. They got rid of Jabal Sheard. This is a major problem for New England. To rely on coverage sacks is something that if I'm, Matt Patricia and I'm Bill Belichick, I don't feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, and it is a work in progress, and I think they're still trying to figure out exactly how it's going to play out in that front. They want somebody to emerge. Trey Flowers last year had a breakthrough season. The kid Wise appears to be a player and someone that fits in to what it is they do. Something that struck me as I make my preparation, I write down little buzzwords for each guy in case they make a play, and it's something that might spur a thought on the air. And the word that I tend to write more than any other for the Patriots, and certainly more than any other team that I cover in the NFL, is versatile. Every guy seems to be versatile. There's something that they look for. Now, they don't have that one clear-cut alpha dog in the front that you're alluding to. Other teams have it. They don't. They've gotten by with a team mentality. They've had bigger names in the past. I'll be curious to see how this group comes together. I would still expect that this group finds a way when it's all said and done. Are they the best defensive team in the NFL? Of course not. We saw that reveal itself in week 1, at times in week 2. They'll be better week 17 than they are in week 3. I can tell you that.
And that's going to do it for our conversation with the master of the rack attack. It is Ian Eagle. Ian, thanks for taking some time to join us today and talk with us here.
All right, Evan, all the best. We'll talk soon, man.
And that'll do it for this edition of Patriots Roundtable on CLNS Media, brought to you by Draft. Make sure you go to playdraft.com or just download the Draft app on your smartphone. Use the promo code PATSBEAT for a free entry with your deposit. We'll be back with more Patriots Roundtable with Mike and myself, Evan Valenti, next time.
What's going on, Pats Nation? This is Marvin Zahn of the CLNS Media Network, and I'm here to tell you right now to check out the CLNS Media New England Patriots postgame show hosted by myself and my co-host, Mr. Mike Nice. And live on CLNS Radio immediately after every single Pats game. Call in at 929-477-2386 toll-free to get your voice heard and contribute to the host breakdown and analysis of the latest Patriots contest. We also got the stars and sorries of the day, Twitter posts for the plays of the game, and everything else that is going on with the 5-time Super Bowl champions. Subscribe to CLNS Media New England Patriots postgame show on iTunes and Stitcher, and the best way, download the free CLNS Media Network mobile app for on-demand listening anytime, any place, anywhere.